Hello and welcome to the Jumps Racing Podcast for episode 2. Firstly, we know you very much enjoyed episode 1, so hopefully episode 2 could be just as great. I'm Bobby Beevers, always. I'm alongside Nick Seddon. Nick, great to see you, and what a great few days of racing we've enjoyed.
Yeah, hello, Bobby. Hello, everyone listening. It's well and truly now the jump season is back, and it's great to be back for episode 2 of the podcast. Loads to talk about, none more so than Wetherby, but plenty of interesting action at Downroll and Ascot to boot as well, including one of the most bizarre finishes to a race I think I've ever seen.
This time of the year as well, Nick, I don't know if you feel this, I'm sure you do, but I feel that this is the time when the jumps racing starts to take some serious effect now and starts to get into full swing after the Charlie Hall. We can look forward to some huge days of racing coming up in the next couple of months.
Yeah, definitely. It really gets, we're in November now. We've got Cheltenham in a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden it's into the Betfair, the Ladbroke Trophy, King George. So yeah, we're well and truly in there now. We've waved a lovely goodbye to the flat, and it's time for the jumps again. So can't wait to get stuck in now.
We'll look first back at what we saw on Saturday at Wetherby, and we will start with the Grade 2 Charlie Hall. Ballyoptic was the winner for Nigel Twiston-Davies and Sam Twiston-Davies. It was the 50th renewal of the Charlie Hall. Ballyoptic, of course, for Nigel Twiston-Davies, he's won the race for a 6th time, and Ballyoptic also undefeated over the fences at Wetherby.
Yeah, as we mentioned, the national hunt season's well and truly back going now, and we were both there at Wetherby on Saturday, and I think the first thing to mention is, goodness me, it felt like a day of national hunt racing from a weather perspective. Absolutely bucketed it down. It was very soggy and really attritional conditions for this time of year, and that didn't half show in the Charlie Hall, the feature race. There'd been about 4 or 5 races, I think, on Wetherby by that point on the course, and stamina was very much the word in terms of the Charlie Hall. And Ballyoptic, really game winner. It's just he's been a strange one in the last couple of seasons. We've always touted him as a horse with great potential. First as a staying chaser, and latterly first as staying herd the story, now as a staying chaser, and he seems to finally have clicked into pace and come into his own so far this autumn. He caught our eye when making a winning reappearance a couple of weeks ago at Chepstow. And then there was a lot to like about this at Wetherby as well. I thought he jumped pretty well, showed plenty of stamina. And, it's time now for Ballyoptic to take this form into the winter. And it'll be interesting to see where he goes, because it doesn't always happen with the Charlie Hall. Definitely not last year. He won the Many Clouds at Aintree and then couldn't really take it into the real crucial months of the national hunt season. So it's now or never really for Ballyoptic, and it will be interesting to see whether he can turn himself into a bona fide top-class Grade 1 chaser.
Do you think he'll go for the Betfair chase in a few weeks at Haydock?
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I suppose it will come down to what his connections want to do with him this season, whether they see him as a Gold Cup horse. I think it's interesting that there's no quote for him to go for the Gold Cup yet. He's 14-1 for the Betfair chase, so that's an interesting option for him. He's 50s for the Grand National. I just wonder whether they'll go for the beat to chase or whether they'll avoid that now, because he's had 2 starts over the national fences last season and fallen both.
I think the last time it did work out fantastically was probably Q Card, when he won the Charlie Hall, and then he went on to win the Betfair, and then he won the King George after that, and then fell in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. We'll talk about a few of the other ones in the rail. We'll talk about the horse that finished second. That was Elegant Escape, should I say. Do you think he'll go straight for the Welsh Grand National to try and defend his crown?
It's the obvious port of call for him, isn't it, really? I think he sort of showed what he was all about yet again yesterday, in that he is all about stamina. He stayed on really noticeably in the Charlie Hall. He was probably a smidged outpaced, which probably puts pace to his chances at the top level. If he's going to be outpaced in the Charlie Hall, it's not going to serve him well in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. But he is all about stamina, and he really just screams the Welsh National. I think his mark is 160 at the moment, which is an eye-watering one for a handicap race where he's going to have to give weight away. But I suppose it's just a thing where Colin Tizzard might just have to be coy with him and look out for races that are going to ask a lot of stamina, where the going comes heavy, and he's really is turning into that sort of candidate that if we do come up with a particularly wet Cheltenham Gold Grand National, we're always going to see money for Elegant Escape, and he's probably always going to run his race as well. So he's going to be bang there all season.
ASO was back in third. I think he ran another great race as well. Just no match for the two in front of him, really.
Yeah, ran a brilliant race. As to be fair to him, he normally does. I think the key thing with ASO is that 3 miles probably just stretches him. But he looks a good animal, particularly over 2.5 miles. He's run 2 Stormers in the Ryanair Chase now, 2 years running. Third 2 years ago, second this year, and surprisingly he's 33-1 for a horse that is only 10 next year for the Ryanair Chase. I definitely think there is a Grade 1 race over 2.5 miles within his reach. Could be something like the Ascot Chase, but I think the Ryanair is always going to be the ultimate aim for him.
Definitely read last year's winner. It was back in fourth for Brian Ellison and Danny Cook, and listen, with him I know he's got the form on heavy ground, in the past. But I think he's better on like good ground, for example, and good to soft, really.
Yeah, he was plenty fancied him yesterday to defend his crown in the Charlie Hall. The case was there for definitely red, and just wasn't really at it, was he?
No.
That being said, though, we know what he's all about. He's a fine servant, and he just strikes me as the type who will come on for that massively. And I imagine he'll head straight to the Many Clouds at Aintree next month.
I would imagine that would be where we'll see him next, over at Aintree. Tocqueville Ben was back in fifth, of course. Tocqueville Ben, he did make the run in, and again we spoke about obviously ASO running a really good race. I think so did Tocqueville Ben as well.
Yeah, I thought he ran a really good race. We spoke to him last week. You spoke to him, Bobby, on the podcast, and Phil Kirby was bullish about his chances, and I think he conducted himself really well. It was a noticeable step up in grade. I know he'd contested at the festivals last year, but his 2 wins had come in novice company, minor company. So I thought he ran really well. He attacked his fences. He was up top. He really ran well for a long way, and then just fizzled out late on. So I think what he's got to prove now is that he can come on from that, and he wasn't just flying too high, and he's definitely worth another chance moving forward, sure.
We need to talk about favourites, Le Bagois, who of course was undefeated at Wetherby, full stop, going into the race. She was actually pulled up, didn't really run any sort of race at all. Yeah,
too bad to be true, really, wasn't it? She was so likeable last year. We said that on last week's podcast, and from an early stage, it just didn't look like she was at it at all. She wasn't attacking offences from the front like she normally does. She was given more of a hold-up ride. And, she was entitled to need this. She was a star last year. I'm hoping that she'll bounce back and she'll come on leaps and bounds for this and be right back to her best next time out.
The Bet365 hurdle, as it's known nowadays, was run just before the Charlie Hall. Of course, we know it as the West Yorkshire hurdle, and the World's End for Tom George and Adrian Heskin was very impressive. He's got his season off to an absolute screamer.
Yeah, really, really impressive. He's another, a bit like Ballyoptic, that he's always had that talent. He was a Grade 1 winning novice back in 2017 at Aintree, and things hadn't really gone to plan since. He didn't transition into open company as a staying hurdler, and then the switch to fences never quite worked for him. I know he won a couple of novice contests. So it was really good to see him return to winning ways here. The dominant winner. It's worth noting that he was getting £6 from, Harry, who's pushing 12 now. So he's going to have to push on from this. But he's 16-1 for the for the Stayers hurdle. Sorry, showing my age there. I think that's a fair price, but I think he's got a bit to go yet before we can put him in the same bracket as the likes of Paisley Park.
You know what I mean, Harry, as you just said, was back in second. Two Tafts was back in third for the Skelton brothers, and this one had a really good race after that long layoff, and I hope Two Tafts could go and build on this now.
Yeah, another one who run an eye-catching race. As always, with one with a long layoff, the bounce factor is going to come into play, but hopefully they can get a good run into him now, and he can really start to show his ability at this level.
Do you think Ballyandy got the trip?
No, I think the note I've got written here is experiment failed. I said last week that I thought he was a horse that was without a niche. I can see why they've stepped him up to 3 miles. Admittedly, it was attritional conditions, but I think he is going to be the sort that will, like last year, be very much in the top end handicaps, and I think he's on a reasonable mark for that as well.
When we did the first podcast, we mentioned about LeBroy going back over hurdles, of course, winning the 4 miler at Cheltenham back in March. And we were saying, why is he going back over the hurdles? What's the meaning behind this? Now, he was actually pulled up in the race. So it'd be interesting to see where they go now with LeBroy. Do they stay with the hurdles? Do they campaign him over the hurdles this year? Or do they go back to the fences?
We were chatting about him in the media room on Saturday at Wetherby, and it seems to have answered the question. We're wondering about why LeBroy was being sent here, and it just seemed to be a really good opportunity to try and pick up a good prize over hurdles. We know how talented he is as a chaser. He's all about stamina, and I think it's starting to scream, to me at least, that it could be a national tilt. It'd be very interesting to see where they send him now. Are they going to try and protect his mark? Are they going to chuck him in the Beecher? I think LeBroy is going to be a real stayers type. It could even be the Welsh national next.
Just before we talk about what happened down at Ascot in more ways than one, let's say, just a quick word on the listed mares race. Of course, Lady Buttons winning the race for a second consecutive year. And we mentioned before, we was there. She got a huge cheer. Great for local trainer Phil Kirby. Of course, he had a treble on the card 12 months ago. This time, he did have the winner with the very popular Lady Buttons. That cheer for her was brilliant.
Yeah, he tweeted as well. I thought it was really nice that he was proud of all three of his runners on the day. I thought all three ran their own races, ran really well. And this Lady Buttons is, it's really hard not to like her, isn't it? Marvellous win. She won as she liked, really. And she's a fine servant. She's versatile. I think what's really likeable about her is how versatile she is. She can attack a fence. She's good over hurdles. And she's the perfect racehorse if you want to own a jumps animal. I think she's going to be a load of fun again for her connections this year, particularly against her own sex, and should be good.
She certainly will indeed. Right then, let's talk about what happened down at Ascot. I think this is very important to speak about what happened down at about some of the winners. We'll talk about what happened with Diego de Charmel. What's your thoughts and opinions about this?
No, Bobby, how would you go about trying to describe what happened in the closing stages here at Ascot?
I remember watching it and I was just like, what on earth just happened there? Absolute chaos. Like, the horse went to the left, took out the stablemate, and then jumped and still won. It was just bizarre. It was just so. To be honest with you, I'd be lying if I could say I'd be able to describe it in fine detail, because every time I watch it, I come up with a different scenario.
Yeah, I think it's pretty telling that I was sat next to Cornelius Lycett to the BBC, one of the most experienced journalists in the game. And the first thing he said is, I have never seen anything like that. And, and that is pretty much as it was. And it was a strange one, because it was the finish. The two stable mates, Diego de Charmel and Caitlin, were coming towards the final flight, and then seemingly a loose horse in front, dodges the fence, runs violently left, and just pulls Diego Charmel's attention enough to worry him out of, fully jumping the fence, completely impedes Caitlin. Diego de Charmel goes over like the master part of the fence. Caitlin goes through the rail, and then Diego Charmel somehow manages to win the race. Now, the big debate was about the Stewards Inquiry, and I think this is one of those rare situations where even the stewards weren't overly sure about what was going on. But as far as I saw it anyway, it was quite simple. Caitlin failed to complete the course because he jumped the wing of the fence through no zone, I must say. Whereas Diego de Charmel jumped the fence, albeit the biggest part of the fence, and did himself absolutely no favours whatsoever. So I think it left the stewards with no choice really but to throw out Caitlin, who eventually finished fifth. And Rightly or wrongly, Diego Sharma, who completely impeded his stablemate, kept the race. But it's a strange one. I saw Nick Luck on Twitter sort of say that it's incredible. He's over for the Breeders' Cup, of course, at the moment, that with the British interference rules, that the winner was allowed to keep the race after causing so much trouble. But I think the rules are built up to revolve around the jockey's conduct. And as far as that's concerned, neither Lorcan Williams or Bryony Frost did absolutely anything wrong at all. So
agreed.
It was the right thing to do to let Diego de Charmo keep the race. And goodness me, how on earth he managed to keep the race, I'll never know.
Talk about the Grade 3 handicap chase that went off at 3:20 on the Saturday afternoon at Ascot, and Vindication was absolutely tremendous in that race.
Yeah, really good. Really good to see him get back to winning ways, because the beginning of last season anyway, he was threatening to be a real superstar. He'd won his first 6 starts over obstacles, and we were thinking, blimey, this thing could be a real machine. And then it just faded away at the second half of last year. But he returned to handicap company this time off a mark of 151. It proved to be lenient, and he won really, really well. And it's going to be interesting now to see where they go with him. Do they chuck him in the Welsh National? He stays 3 miles. It'd be interesting. I don't know what you think, Bobby, but he's one to get excited about again, I think.
Certainly is indeed. And we mentioned quite a few horses in this episode of the podcast that could go for the Welsh Grand National. And, the 27th of December, if I've got the date right, 27th, 28th of December, when it's actually ran, it could be an absolute crack of the Welsh Grand National this year.
It could be. Hopefully everyone gets there. And, the weather as well always seems to play a big part in that. It always seems to be bottomless at Chepstow, provided it isn't one way or the other in terms of the going. Yeah, it could be an astonishing renewal. And, this form at Ascot, the Sodexo Gold Cup, could look really strong, because each of the first 4 in there, I will say that, Black Horton and Regal Encore, we know how good they are and how consistent they are. But on the blind side, looks to be on a really good mark at the moment. 149. I think there's definitely a big race with him at some point for Nicky Henderson as well.
Well, look back at what we saw briefly on Friday afternoon at Down at Royal, and we'll start first with, of course, Sublime. He won a very competitive Grade 2 over in Northern Ireland on Friday afternoon, and he was again impressive that day.
Yeah, 15-length success in a Grade 2 hurdle. I think the most interesting thing about him, having gone back and had a look at his previous form, is that was just his second win over fences and over hurdles, for Gordon Elliott. He's clearly a talented type, and he was second in the Triumph last year, so a big compliment for Penland Hills. He's got to back this form up next time out. But you can't say I think it would be rash at this stage to say he's a bona fide champion hurdle horse. He's 25 to 1 at the time of recording. But he's definitely one to keep an eye on after that.
And we need to talk about another horse on the day who is undefeated in bumpers, 3 from 3 in bumpers, and now is also, as it stands at the moment, undefeated chasing as well, and that is a certain Samcro. He justified the 1-3 favouritism there. Where do you think the path will take Samcro throughout his chasing career?
Well, hopefully on an upward trajectory, because he was well and truly back to his best, wasn't he, on Friday? He threatened to be a real superstar as a novice hurdler, and then it never really got going for him last year when he went down the champion hurdle path. But I always think it's interesting that his owner, Mr. O'Leary, always said that he was a horse to follow over fences, and he looked the ideal type. He attacked his fences with zest. And he bowled clear, and it will be really interesting to see where he goes now. He looks a novice chaser to follow, and these quotes for the Cheltenham Festival say that he's 8 to 1 for the JLT, 20 to 1 for the Arkle, 25 to 1 for the RSA, and he is really interesting in that respect, Bobby, because he's a Ballymore winner, which is 2 mile and 5 over hurdles. He was a Cheltenham champion hurdle contender last year. That's 2 miles, but we know that he will probably get 3 miles. So it sort of opens up every avenue for him this year. So I don't know where you think. Would you think he would go in the Arkle? What would your instincts be? JLT, RSA?
If it was generally down to me, I would say go down the JLT route. That would be my honest opinion. I would say that the JLT would be perfect for him. So if you would say to me now, it's your decision, where would you like to see him run? For me, I'd definitely go with the JLT. Do you agree or disagree with me?
It's time for the rash opinion section of the show where I'm going to throw an absolute humdinger at you because he had his extra season over hurdles last year, so he's 7 at the moment. He's 8 next year. I just wonder, because I was stood behind Michael O'Leary when he was talking about Samcro at the Dublin Festival a couple of years ago when he was still a novice. Michael O'Leary could say is he's a Gold Cup horse. He will win the Gold Cup. And I just wonder, he's 8 next year. If he wins a Grade 1 novice or a couple of Grade 1 novices between now and February like that, whether the temptation would be with the division being as open as it is at the moment in the Gold Cup, whether they just chuck him in, much like they did with Thistlecrack a couple of years ago, jumped him straight into open company when he went on to win the King George. He's 66-1 at the moment for the Gold Cup. It wouldn't shock me one bit if he was a lot shorter come March.
Yeah, you hear it here first for people watching on YouTube now and listen to us as well. So 66-1 Samcro for the Gold Cup. Let's move on to Saturday, Nick, and we'll talk about Envoy Allen first.
Yeah, 5 out of 5 now for him. Flawless in bumpers and a flawless start over hurdles. It's probably one of those with these novices first time out. Probably hasn't beaten an awful lot, but everything that was put in front of him on Saturday, he did to perfection. He was toying with them a bit, going around the bend and then bowl clear, jumped his hurdles really well. And, could be anything, really could be anything. And a really exciting prospect for the season. And I think he's an interesting one again, he's probably got the pace for a Supreme, or are they going to step him up and look towards more of a Ballymore with him? So it will be fascinating to see what they do.
The big race of the day over in Northern Ireland on Saturday, of course, was the Champion Chase, and Road to Respect got the job done for Noel Meade and Sean Flanagan, should I say. Clanders Elbow, unfortunately, couldn't give Mr. Nichols another win in this race. So he could only finish second, but Road to Respect, that was a gutsy, fine performance, that, Nick.
Yeah, it was a superb race, wasn't it, to watch? I think it was a bit unlucky in the way it was. I'm guessing it wasn't on ITV Racing on Saturday, was it? The Champ Down Roll?
I'm not sure. I actually heard that it was.
Oh, was it? Oh, right.
I actually heard they were taking. I was actually told they was taking that race only. I don't know if they did, but I am led to believe that they did take it, but I could be wrong.
Oh, superb. Well, because we say that because it was the timings were quite close as far as we were concerned on Saturday to Wetherby.
Yep.
Which meant that when we were trying to watch Down Royal on the media room TV, they kept bringing up Wetherby TV, and we were instead watching Lady Buttons go to the start line or something. So I sort of missed out on watching this on Saturday, but crikey, having watched it back, it was a tremendous race. And it was almost a tip in itself, wasn't it, that Clanders Obo had made the trip over the Irish Sea to Down Royal for it. And I don't think there was any shame in him finding Road to Respect too strong. He won this last year in breathtaking fashion. So he's one that, Noel Meade has been able to get ready in the past. And he was right to his best. And he's just a bona fide Grade 1 performer, isn't he? He held his own largely last year in a host of good races. 3rd in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. He placed in the Irish Gold Cup. He placed in the Savills Chase behind Kenboy. And it will probably, you'd think, be that sort of route for him. And I think the same, it's a copy and paste job for Clanders Obo because he's a bona fide Grade 1 chaser. And unless they go for the Betfair with him, it will be straight to Kempton, I imagine, next.
I just want to get your thoughts and opinion about what we saw on Sunday afternoon up at Carlisle. There was a listed chase, and Lost in Translation was so unbelievably impressive, wasn't it, for Colin Tizzard and Robbie Power, of course. I followed him last season, particularly when he won the Dipper. He also won the Grade 1 Mile May as well at the Grand National Festival. But how impressive was he up at Carlisle on Sunday?
Yeah, if you read weekend previews, coming into the weekend, all of the focus in terms of Cheltenham Gold Cup clues will have been on the Charlie Hall at Wetherby Down Royal Champion Chase, and it might be that we saw a real Gold Cup clue instead at Carlisle this afternoon on Sunday, because crikey, it was hard not to be impressed with Lost in Translation. He won that novice, he won that intermediate chase in such good style, and I think as well that the thing that impressed me was that he didn't have. It wasn't like he didn't have credible opposition. Both Kildasar and Count Marable were useful novices last term. And there's a clip of him, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, jumping one of the fences in the early stages of the race. Very similar to the way that Vindication attacked one of his fences yesterday. Absolutely flew over it. And if he carries on attacking like that, attacking his fences, he looks a bona fide Gold Cup contender. The Betfair Chase is the obvious next port of call. He's 3-1 for that. And it would be foolish to say that he isn't a Gold Cup contender at this stage. He's got to step into Grade 1 company next, but he is a Grade 1 winning novice. We saw him win really well at Aintree back in April. And I do think, as I said a little earlier, that the Gold Cup division, the staying chasing division, is wide open at the moment. There's plenty of big names in there, don't get me wrong, but I think it is a division that's waiting to be grabbed by the scruff of the neck. And he appeals as one at the time of recording that could go right to the top. Yeah, no,
I very much agree with you, and I think he's one to definitely keep a very close eye on for the season. Rather, Nick, you mentioned that me and you was at Wetherby on Saturday afternoon, and you caught up with Jenny McGrath, didn't you?
Okay, so good afternoon from Wetherby. It's Charlie Hall Chase Day, and I'm joined now by the jockey Jerry McGrath, who I'm delighted to say is sponsored this season by horseracing.net. Jerry, it's a pleasure to have you on board, and hopefully it's going to be a really good season.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Looking forward to, hopefully, like I said, it'll be very beneficial for myself and for your company going forward.
You come into this season on the back of what was a really productive one last year. I think it was your second highest tally of winners and a Cheltenham Festival winner to boot.
Yeah, exactly. You'd nearly take less winners in a season and have a Cheltenham Festival winner, because at the end of the day, that's what people probably remember for you when you retire. That's probably the headline, is how many winners you rode at the Cheltenham Festival, which is probably not the best way to remember people, but unfortunately in sport you always remember for the good days.
What is it like to ride a Cheltenham Festival winner? Is anything quite up there? Is it the pinnacle of a jockey's career?
Yeah, well, I suppose I was kind of one of those situations. I rode one when I was 21, 22. I was still claiming £5 at the time. I won the Fred Winter, and that had been 5 or 6 years ago. And back then when you're 21, 22, you think it's easy. You think you wouldn't have. You're not after that many injuries. You think this is easy enough, and you're going to have plenty more winners. And like I said, it took me 5 or 6 years again to ride my second one. And you probably appreciate the second one a lot more than the first, because you take it in and you realise how hard they are to come. Like, a lot of lads don't get rides at the Cheltenham Festival, never mind winners. And it was a great feat and a day that you'll never ever forget.
But last season's Cheltenham Festival winner came on Beware the Bear, and he's a horse who you've built up a brilliant rapport with over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's been really, he's a different horse last year once we applied the blinkers and things like that, and a bit of change of tactics, and he's probably grown into himself too. He's a big old-fashioned chasing type. He had a good year the year before, and he just went a bit disappointing on us. But no, he won 3 races last year, obviously the pinnacle being the Cheltenham Festival, and the plan this season is to go straight for the Hennessy, which is it's just around the corner really. It's less than a month away.
Next week, so key race will be the Elite Hurdle at Wincanton. That's a race you won last year with Verdana Blue.
Yeah, Verdana, she was very good there last year, and it was kind of the track suited her that day, because it was a very dry winter, as everyone knows, and the ground was only good ground that day, and she's a lot of gears. She's a very talented filly, and she was able to show that talent on good ground around a sharp track that day.
She was another one who had a stellar season last year, won the Grade 1 at Kempton. Hopefully now you can give us one to follow from the Nicky Henderson yard for this season. You're a man who gets some rivaled access in terms of that. Is there any that you've seen on the gallops that might have a good year that's under the radar at the moment?
Yeah, as you can probably, everyone kind of knows that Nicky's horses haven't really kicked into gear yet. Like this morning now, usually on a Saturday morning we'd ride lots of bit of work on up the grass, but I had to get in the car early this morning and come to Wetherby. But one horse that I would just keep an eye on, he won his 2 novice hurdles last year, but he probably went a bit disappointing towards the back end. But a horse that's going novice chasing this year is a horse called Pim. He was actually a non-runner at Cheltenham last week, only because the ground went heavy, but he's been very, very good at home. He's been jumping, his jumping offences has been immaculate at home, so he's definitely one to keep on side this year going forward.
And he wears rather familiar colours, doesn't he? The same colours as Altior.
Yeah, it's probably unfortunate for the horse really himself, the fact he'll probably never be as good as Altior, and he's obviously owned by the same connections. He'll never be in that sort of limelight, which is unfortunate for him probably, but he's a very talented horse in his own right and definitely one to keep on side.
Last but not least, while we mention Altior, any update on him? I mean, we've run out of superlatives to describe him now.
Yeah, and he's just an incredible horse. Even at home, he's such a good workhorse. You know, like I'm convinced he'd work with any flat horse in the country. You know, he's incredible, the speed he shows, and obviously they've decided to go 2.5. That's kind of the plan. He'll stay it, whether he wants it or not, or whether he'll improve for it, I don't know, but I think he's an exceptional chaser over 2 miles, and they're going into unknown territory. But if you actually look at his pedigree, he's actually bred to stay, so I don't think 2.5 will be any issue for him.
Jerry, cheers for chatting to us, and catch up with you soon.
No worries, Nick, thank you.
So that was Jerry McGrath. Great to chat with him at Wetherby on Saturday. Seems a terrific bloke, and looking forward to working with him on horseracing.net for the rest of the season. And hopefully, Bobby, Cheltenham Festival winner last year with Beware the Bear. Hopefully that one has a really good year again this season.
Hopefully, yes. Beware the Bear winning the ultimate. Great to see Jenny McGrath get another winner at the Cheltenham Festival as well. So, yeah, hopefully Beware the Bear will have a great season. So, and also Jenny McGrath has a great season as well. Rather, just before we talk, before we sign the podcast off, should we say, I'll let you know where you can watch it and download it, etc., etc. Got a bit of a bone to pick with you, Nick. The reason why we're recording this early and why it's going out on Monday evening is because you, my friend, are going to Barcelona. What's that all about?
Yeah, guilty. Going on it's a total shambles, actually. Supposed to be going with my mate on Thursday to watch, because we're obsessed with the Europa League. We were going to go and watch Espanyol in the Europa League, so we've gone to Barcelona. Yeah, booked the flights and everything, and then it turns out there's an ongoing scandal at Espanyol, and they're charging €90 to watch Ludogorets against Espanyol. So we're not going to the match, we're just going to go to a pub instead. So we could have done what we're doing in Chorley, but we're doing it in Barcelona instead.
Why not? Well, Nick, I hope you have a great time nevertheless.
Thank you very much. It's 20 degrees, so don't feel too sorry for me.
Yeah, I think it might be a bit different. You know, obviously you'll be in the nice heat, and we'll be in the cold and the wet here in rainy England. Let's say, Nick, as always, a pleasure to work with you. And don't forget, to people listening and watching now, if you do like to listen to the audio of this podcast, it's available on Apple Music and also on SoundCloud as well. You can watch on YouTube, and don't forget as well, you can see it on screen right now. Drop us a follow on Twitter at horseracing_net, and that has everything on there, all the content that's being produced by horseracing.net, the links to the podcast as well. So make sure, if you haven't already, do drop at horseracing_net a follow on Twitter. That's the end of episode 2 of the Jumps Racing podcast. And Nick, as I say, it's always a pleasure to win.
Yeah, Bobby, it's been a pleasure. And next time we'll be chatting, it will be about Cheltenham, so should be plenty to talk about.
It certainly will indeed. Myself and Nick will be back on Wednesday, the 13th of November, and we'll be looking ahead to that huge meeting at Cheltenham, the Bet Victor Gold Cup meeting, Friday, Saturday and Sunday at Prestbury Park. And myself and Nick will be previewing that on Wednesday, the 13th of November.